The following program is made possible in part by the Dayton Bar Association.
Good evening and welcome to this month's edition of You and the Law. Our topic this evening is going to be broadly focusing on seniors in the community. We're going to give you a little bit of an introduction to the vehicle for assisting seniors through Legal Aid of Western Ohio, the acronym for that being LAWO, L-A-W-O. You'll hear me fumbling a little bit as I say LAWO or Legal Aid of Western Ohio, or maybe we'll talk about this and get to a point where we'll say legal aid. But the program this evening will get started momentarily. I just want to remind you that this production is viewable on the TV stations that are listed on the DATV website. That's www.datv.org. The show is also live streaming and will be available on YouTube within the week for your viewing if you miss it this evening. Once again, thank you for being here. This is a live call-in show. We hope you'll call in with questions about the topic for the evening, and let's get started. My guest this evening is a wonderful attorney here in the Dayton area. His name is Gary Weston. Gary has, well, I'll let him tell you a little bit about his background and what he does, but he is a senior attorney with Legal Aid of Western Ohio, and he does a lot of work with seniors in this area, and we'll talk about a particular project that Gary has been involved in called the Plan Ahead and Protect Yourself Legal Services Project. For seniors. I think I may have added a word in there, but I close, right, Gary?
Yes.
And without further ado, let's turn this to Gary's direction and get started. Gary, welcome.
Jeff, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. Now, why don't we tell the audience a little bit about what I've alluded to as far as legal aid, and we'll talk about ABLE briefly, Advocates for Basic Legal Equality. So let's get started. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what legal aid means in Dayton?
Sure.
And I'd like to hear a little bit about your background and what you do and what your colleagues do, and then we'll ease into talking more and specifically about programming for seniors. How's that?
That sounds great.
Well,
let me tell you a little bit about what we do at Legal Aid of Western Ohio, or as you have abbreviated it, LAWO, we call ourselves sometimes.
Okay.
And we have a partner law firm, ABLE, Advocates for Basic Legal Equality. And we are essentially a law firm, a nonprofit partnership for individuals who otherwise would not have access to our legal system, to legal information, to solutions through the legal system for some really important problems. We serve low-income individuals only, usually within, and sometimes very well within, 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. Occasionally we can serve individuals with incomes a bit higher than that. For folks who are 60 and older, sometimes we're able to help them if they're of moderate means, but not quite as low income. And what we help with are usually problems that mean a lot in terms of their ability to protect legal rights, get justice through our legal system, but also deal with just some really fundamental problems of living, housing issues, issues regarding income or public assistance that perhaps they've been denied or wrongly terminated from. Perhaps they're a domestic violence survivor. Perhaps they've been the victim of elder abuse or exploitation. It's a range of issues, but that's in a nutshell what we do at Legal Aid and ABLE. And we work really closely also with a group I know you're familiar with called the Greater Dayton Volunteer Lawyers Project. And that group helps to engage most of the lawyers and law firms in the Dayton area to take cases and handle those cases on what we call pro bono, or without charge to folks who qualify for those services. So that's just a very quick overview of what we do.
Well, it's a very good overview.
Well, thank you.
Now, let me just ask if you would add a little explanation. I think that comes up often, the issue comes up of whether you do civil work or criminal work and what the difference is in this context. And if people are in doubt, should they just generally call if they're not sure whether you actually handle that kind of work?
Well, thanks for the question, because sometimes there really is confusion. And as you know, we handle only civil cases, no criminal cases. Mm-hmm. If someone is indigent, they are without means to hire counsel in a criminal matter, it would typically be the public defender office, or at times someone else, a court would appoint to represent them. But at Legal Aid, we do not handle any criminal cases at all. We handle civil cases only. The other thing that may be important for folks to know is there are a range of cases we do not handle because legal representation is available even for persons who are very low income and cannot afford to retain an attorney. That would be typically where a lawyer or a law firm might take a case under what's called a contingency fee arrangement. If it's a personal injury case, for example, and they want to bring a lawsuit against someone, they may be able to find a personal injury lawyer or law firm to handle that case who's not going to be charging until or unless there's a settlement or a judgment in that case. And there are a range of other cases we unfortunately don't take because we just do not have enough lawyers or enough paralegals or staff to handle every case for every person who needs help. Despite the fact we have a lot of great support, not only from the legal community, but from many funding sources, there's still only about one legal aid attorney for every 8,000 or 9,000 people who actually would qualify. So we do have to prioritize cases and tend to handle the cases where we know they're really urgent and significant problems for the folks who want to be our clients. But also they're the kind of thing we as attorneys are able to help with. We're able to do something about to maybe get a remedy.
Okay, now before I ask you maybe to give me a typical starting point here for someone who's looking for help.
Sure.
It occurs to me that when people are in doubt, they should call. And I think that's an important thing. And the number may appear on the screen for LOLA, but just in case, why don't you give us that number and explain it? Well, why don't we start, if you're going to start to give the number, maybe you can, I'll give you a typical scenario that I think is typical. So someone is having a problem with an issue related to a problem with seniors. Maybe it's a financial issue, maybe it's a fear that they're being defrauded,
Right.
Something of that nature, and they don't know where to go for help. And in answering this, if you'll touch on the relationship again with the Volunteer Lawyers Project and how some cases will go to you and some to them in this scenario. So the first thing is folks should call the number you're going to give us.
Okay. So the starting point for anyone, whether they may qualify with LAWO, ABLE, or the Volunteer Lawyer Project, is our intake team. We call that our legal aid line. And there is a toll-free phone number, which is 888-534-1432. And that is answered Monday through Friday during typical business hours. Someone would call and leave their phone number, which is hopefully very convenient because someone will call them back almost always the same day. And if it's an emergency, treat it as an emergency. but the person who's looking for help will have a chance to talk with one of our staff to not only explain what kind of problem they're experiencing or what kind of legal help they're hoping for, but also get into details in terms of their eligibility. Are they actually able to qualify to be represented? And the representation we might provide could range everything from representing somebody in a court case, perhaps even filing a case in court, to giving them legal advice and counsel, to maybe preparing documents for them, or giving them some other self-help resources. It's a range depending on their problem and our capacity to help.
And I don't want to go through that part too quickly because there's so much right there. Because I think over the years I've learned that people will call and that I'll hear this in some fashion, that they're frustrated because they thought that they would get an attorney when they first called. And I know, and if people are listening and thinking about this with a multitude of calls, you have people who are very well trained, who are not lawyers. I don't know if the term paralegal applies in all instances, but they're well trained, know what services you provide, what programs you have that might provide for you, your representation, this type of thing. And they will, as you said, call you back if they can't take the call, or you don't get them the first time.
Right.
But they know what they're doing. And
Yes,
they know
they
what
do.
you have, and folks should not just give up at that point if they
Right.
don't reach an attorney. Now, what happens if somebody doesn't have a phone, but they've used someone else's phone and they don't have a good number? What do you usually recommend to people that they should do?
Well, there are several options, and we actually want this to be as user-friendly for that individual, trying to get the help from us. If they have a computer and internet access, or they know somebody who does, if it's a family member, a friend, a neighbor, a faith-based group they're connected with, a service provider, they can actually apply for our services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week online, and then someone will get back to them at the number or whatever way they have told us they're reachable. And the website, legalaidline.org, again, that would be www.legalaidline.org, is both the place someone could submit an online application, but it's also the place where we have a self-help center where we have a lot of information on some of these legal topics of concern that I think is going to be a valuable resource, whether or not they actually connect with us and we're able to take them as a client. There's a lot of resources we have on the Self-Help Center, including the Plan Ahead, Protect Yourself series we're going to be focusing on this evening for older individuals who really may not know that they have legal rights and may not know some of the really important ways they can protect themselves.
And that can even change during the course of the year, as I understand it, as you are funded maybe for a particular grant. So something that you may not have the resources for in January, I don't know when the funding cycles are, but let's say, for example, by June you might have resources that would enable you to have people lawyers, who could then work on that grant and help in a particular area that maybe was not an area you could assist in.
I think that's correct,
previously.
Jeff. Our capacity may vary from time to time, even during a year, based on how many cases our legal staff have, or whether we have some additional resources to be providing some services. And we do try to keep up-to-date information on our website and to make that known in the community in terms of what we can do and sometimes, unfortunately, what we're not able to help with.
Why don't you repeat that website one more time?
www.legalaidline.org.
Okay, and so let's suppose someone calls. They speak to someone who is taking the calls and screening the calls, screening to see if legal aid can be of assistance.
Right.
They may not get them the first time. They will be asked to leave their name, yes, and a phone number. They can also access you on the computer, as you explained. What can they expect in terms of the timing of someone getting back to them? And I want to emphasize that for people out there, don't get frustrated.
Right.
Again, if you've been listening, you get a lot of calls.
And actually, it's even simpler than you've just described,
Okay.
because when somebody
That's great.
calls in, they're going to get a message that will ask them to just put in their 10-digit phone number. They don't
Okay.
even have to put their name and a lot of other information right
okay.
then. And someone will call them back, hopefully the same day. Now, depending on our capacity and how many people have called, it may be the next day, or even later than that under some circumstances, but the idea is we'll get back in touch with them as quickly as possible, and then try to kind of triage and prioritize based on what the problem is and what's happening with them. Sometimes people call because they have a court case coming up, maybe their landlord is attempting to evict them, or there's another court hearing, and those would take priorities, although the other thing probably everybody should know is if someone calls us the day of a hearing, we're not going to be able to accept a case instantaneously and go represent them in court that day. So the sooner someone knows they need help, and the sooner they can contact us, the better that's going to be, which, by the way, is a theme in our Plan Ahead project for older individuals. We're trying to help, not just in terms of contacting us for help, but just approaching legal issues in general. The earlier you can deal with things, the better off you may be.
Well, you've mentioned that. I've mentioned it once, you've mentioned it twice. I think it's right for us to move on to that with one stop first, and that is, we mentioned Greater Dayton Volunteer Lawyers Project.
Yes.
And so there will be a time when someone calls in, and for reasons that you've enumerated this evening already, legal aid, in this case, Legal Aid of Western Ohio, Law will, may not be able to help that person. When might they get a referral to the Greater Dayton Volunteer Lawyers Project, and just briefly, what is it?
So actually, the legal aid line team, when they're talking with someone to figure out if this is a problem that we can help with, will think about not only LAWO and ABLE, but what is the Volunteer Lawyers Project capacity to be taking certain kinds of cases. And part of that, I'm not a part of that organization, but I understand one of the things they do is just figure out how many lawyers, how many law firms they have available to take on different kinds of cases, because some of those require some specialized expertise from the attorneys. And we'll try to match those lawyers with people who need help, whether it's a bankruptcy issue, whether it's debt problems, whether it's a consumer issue. It could be a wide range of things. But just like legal aid, I think the Volunteer Lawyer Project attempts to get back in touch with folks as quickly as practicable, and to prioritize things that really are emergencies and need prompt attention.
Okay. And correspondingly, I think in many instances, if not all, if you try to call legal aid or the Greater Dayton Volunteer Lawyers Project directly, you may get a message to say, call the
legal aid
line,
Yes.
888-534-1432 that you discussed already
Correct.
tonight, and that gets the process going from the I'll call volunteer lawyers first,
Right.
not legal aid, but again, you work in conjunction.
Yep.
Okay, well, we advertised that we were going to focus on talking about serving seniors tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of topics that you and I spoke about before this evening, and I thought that approaching this by talking about the Plan Ahead and Protect Yourself series for seniors would be a good way to give people a good taste of what you're doing for seniors. And so why don't we just turn it back to you again and tell us what it is,
Sure.
how it came about a little bit, if that's going to be helpful to our audience, and how people can learn about it further and access it and so forth.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm happy to. And before explaining how it works and exactly what we do, it might be useful for me to talk a little bit about why we're doing this project and
Great.
how it came into being.
That's great.
And what we have noticed over the years, especially in recent years, is the increase in legal needs older individuals are experiencing. And of course, those of us who are older are increasingly a larger part of the population, about 20% of the population now, folks 60 plus, and that number is going to be a larger portion of the population. And individuals who are older are increasingly victims of financial exploitation and other kinds of schemes and scams and victimization. And as they get older, sometimes because of health issues or other factors, get to a point where they no longer are able to or really want to manage their financial matters. So what we've done is we have put together what we think is some of the most important information for older individuals specifically to know, and we've put it in 5 classes. Justice for Seniors, which is an introduction to how the legal system works, how you can get legal help at legal aid or someplace else, how to protect your rights, how to approach your legal problems by really giving attention to the paperwork and to planning ahead and to knowing your legal options, etc. Financial power of attorney and more. What is not only a financial POA, but what are the many ways you might be able to get somebody to help you with finances now or at some point in the future, but also if you do it the wrong way, how that can really be harmful. If you entrust someone either as your agent under a power of attorney or through a joint banking account, and they turn out not to be as trustworthy as you thought, they can take the money and run. So we cover ways to approach that and protect yourself. Health advance directives, how to think ahead. Maybe there will be a point when you can't make your own health decisions. What are the options? You could do a healthcare power of attorney, for example. Keeping seniors safe, the legal issues regarding keeping yourself not only personally safe and what to do if you're being victimized, but how to protect your assets, your income, your property, your legal rights. And we have a class in wills and estates. What's going to happen to your property when you die and what are the options? So the other thing, and I know we have a video that may be a great thing to show because it gives a nice overview not only of these classes, but about the approach we're taking where we make this information available in alternative formats because everybody likes to learn and process, their own way. And I think if we are able to show the video, that's going to explain quite a bit about the project and the materials.
Okay, my friend's in charge of that. Can we cue that up and put that on the screen? Let's see.
Ahead and Protect Yourself series for seniors. Video 1, Introduction.
I talked to such a nice woman the other day at my local legal aid office. You know you can do that, right? Call them. She told me what my legal rights are. If you don't stand up for yourself, who will?
You've been making decisions your whole life, for you and your family. We all want to make the right choices and protect ourselves. There's a lot of information out there and a lot of misinformation. Scams, schemes, and financial exploitation are at an all-time high. More than 1 in 3 seniors have been a victim of fraud.
I got a call the other day. The young man on the phone told me I won a cash prize and he needed my bank routing number so that he could deposit the money into my account. He was so convincing and sounded so official. They're smart, those people, but I'm smarter. I hung up on him and reported the phone number to the Attorney General's consumer fraud number.
While there's sometimes no substitute for talking to a lawyer, you can plan ahead and protect yourself. Legal Aid of Western Ohio has created the Plan Ahead and Protect Yourself series for seniors, which includes this 6-part video series, accompanying audio-only format, written materials, and workbooks with helpful information and step-by-step instructions to plan for your medical and financial future. Empower yourself against financial exploitation, know and stand up for your legal rights, and protect your health and safety. It all comes down to what we like to call the 7 Ps.
The 7 what?
The 7 Ps. Remember the 7 Ps to avoid legal problems: planning, protection, power, prevention, people, paper, persistence. Each of the 7 Ps and topics related to them will be covered in the Plan Ahead and Protect Yourself series for seniors. Let's do a quick rundown of each. Planning. Make your wishes known in advance by putting in place a financial power of attorney, a last will and testament, healthcare power of attorney, and a living will. It's never too early to make these decisions and complete the correct legal forms and papers. Protection. Watch out for schemes, scams, and people who want to take advantage of you. Protect your health and safety, your property, money, and personal information. Power. Know your legal rights, options, and resources. Organizations like Legal Aid of Western Ohio or your local legal aid program, Pro Seniors Incorporated, Disability Rights Ohio, and your local bar association can help you. Prevention. You know what they say, an ounce of prevention, well, it's always better to prevent problems. So make sure if you do have a legal problem to deal with it early before it becomes a crisis. People. Only let people you trust have access to your property, money, and personal information. Build a small support group of people you trust completely who can help you when needed. Scammers won't stop at anything to rip you off. Paper. Don't sign anything you don't understand. Get receipts for everything you pay for and copies of everything you sign. Keep important papers where you can find them. Persistence. Stick up for yourself. Ask questions and insist on answers. If you don't understand something, be persistent and don't back down until you have answers.
That's a lot of P's and a lot to remember.
Don't worry, we'll go into more detail on each of these topics in the next 5 videos. Plan Ahead and Protect Yourself is your one stop to get the information, resources, and tools you need to make your own decisions and take control of your future. We hope this video has been helpful. The Plan Ahead and Protect Yourself series for seniors is available in several formats, including this 6-part video series, in audio-only format, written materials, and workbooks. Visit www.legalaidline.org or ohiolegalhelp.org for this information and more.
Thank you. I think we'll leave that on the screen, or are we going to take that off? I guess we'll take that off for now. Hopefully we can put it back on maybe at the end if we have a little extra time. But since I know Gary is so talented, he's going to now spend the next few minutes repeating everything that was just said in that video. Is that right? That's a lot of information. That's wonderful. It's just wonderful, and I have gone to that website, and I have watched that already, that video. I've watched parts of the other videos. It's just so wonderfully done, and I think a lot of people, whether they're in immediate need of legal services or not, particularly if they're in the seniors category, should go to that website and take a look at what's there, and maybe give you some food for thought. And again, remember, this is a protection and planning program, and so it doesn't hurt to look ahead, and maybe you'll avoid some problems down the road. So with that in mind, let me turn it back to you, Gary, and why don't you talk a little bit more about the program, maybe talk about the legal classes and clinics, how those operate. Go ahead.
Well, thanks, Jeff. Well, one of the things that I guess I could add is all of the classes have multimedia material, and all of those are available on that website, legalaidline.org, in the Self-Help Center There's a section for older adults 60 plus. So for the Justice for Seniors class, Health Advance Directives, Financial Power of Attorney and more, Keeping Seniors Safe, Wills and Estate, for each of those, there's a short video, 5 or 6, 7 minutes. There are some fact sheets that give kind of some of the key information in each area of what your legal options are, what you may need to do to protect your legal rights, who maybe can help you. There are audio clips if individuals really would prefer, or maybe have a hearing, have a visual disability and would just like to hear. We also have a workbook because some people like to actually kind of process on their own and go through, different situations or questions. And in addition to all of the multimedia material available on the website, we are also very available and very happy to come out to senior centers, to nursing homes, to faith-based organizations, to just about anywhere there is a group who would like us to do a live class so we can kind of cover the material, in the same room with a group. We also offer what we call legal clinics. And what that means is we would, in some of these areas, be ready to actually sit down with folks and do the legal documents that they need to protect their rights and get some things in place. For example, the healthcare, power of attorney, and living will are forms that we're able to help with.
Okay, now we're going to stop. We'll get back. We have a caller on line 1. Good evening, caller. Good evening. Speak up.
Evening. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we're getting some feedback there for some reason. How can we help you?
How about now?
Well, why don't you keep talking? Let's see.
Okay, we'll keep talking. Just this has been a very interesting and enlightening show so far. And
Thank you.
One of the things that's come up with the advent of the internet and more cable TV is pushing reverse mortgages on seniors. And I'm wondering if Mr. Weston would address whether these are good ideas and some of the pitfalls that arise and some of the dangers for seniors.
Well, this is a question that we frequently get by older individuals who are attending our classes and clinics in the community. And I guess I would briefly answer the gentleman's question the same way I would answer it in that setting, which is be very cautious with consideration of a reverse mortgage or with any transaction. Because sometimes something that appears too good to be true, maybe too good to be true. I am not an expert in reverse mortgages, but know enough to say this is a mechanism whereby someone who is a homeowner who has substantial equity in their real estate can get some money and be using that in their later years, which may be very attractive to that older individual. However, if that is done the wrong way, they may find they're on the end of a very bad deal and possibly are persuaded by someone to sign some legal documents they really don't understand what they're doing and have an unpleasant surprise in terms of what their ownership interests is at a future point. So without getting too much more into the reverse mortgage itself as an option, I think this is a great example of a lesson we try to include in our classes, and then to provide individualized help for people with particular situations or transactions that they're considering or already involved in, which is it's really important to get great information, detailed information, and to run that information by an attorney or perhaps another specialist before you agree to something, you've signed a legal document, and you find you may have given up some legal rights.
I've noticed that Tom Selleck has been on television recently.
Yes.
And talking about reverse mortgages, and while a lot of people have enjoyed Tom over the years, I'm sure, in movies and television, every reverse mortgage is not written the same way. Every company doesn't operate the same. And sadly, I think a lot of folks often look to reverse mortgages when some bad event occurs in their life. They unplanned for bills, medical bills, maybe they've had an accident, and they're looking to get some cash fast. And let's say they have a home and it's worth $100,000 because they've paid off their mortgage, and maybe they've even had it appraised if they're seriously thinking about doing this. And there's a company out there that says, well, we can give you some portion of that $100,000 now in return for us having a right to your property at some point down the road, for instance. In return, maybe you pay us back before you die, maybe you don't, maybe your estate then is responsible for transferring the property, or at least some interest in that property or the value of what we paid you. And it sounds like a good idea to do this. So I just want to echo Gary's sentiments that these can be complicated matters, these reverse mortgages, and you really need to talk to someone who is a trusted individual. It may not be someone that you do your banking with. It may not be your brother-in-law, or it may, but it should be someone who can clearly explain to you what you would be getting, what you would be giving up, and what your obligations would be. I had a call a while back from somebody about one of these, and they didn't realize that part of the arrangement was that even though they were being given some money, and they'd have to repay that or allow their estate to at the end, what they didn't realize was that they were still obligated to pay the property taxes while the reverse mortgage relationship was pending. And they didn't realize that, or so they reported to me, and those taxes were growing, and penalties and interest on those taxes were growing. And now they owed substantially more than what they thought that what they had received from the company that they entered into the reverse mortgage arrangement with. So these are very popular now, and again, they often come up when people are somewhat desperate for cash. All the more reason why talking to folks at Legal Aid, if you cannot afford to retain a private attorney, or even if you can, under some circumstances, you may be eligible because of a grant that Legal Aid has, and you're being a senior and falling into a certain class, you may be able to get the benefit of their wisdom at the Legal Aid Society. Caller, thank you. I'd let the audience know who this is, but they call on a regular basis, and they're about as close to family in this relationship here, so I'll let them remain anonymous this evening. But I thank you, caller. That's a great question.
We appreciate you taking my call and the thoughtful analysis.
Well, thank you for calling again. We'll turn back to our conversation where Gary left off. He was talking about healthcare powers of attorney, and the context in which you were explaining that, I'll let you talk about, Gary. But if we talk about those documents and just why people might be calling to ask for help, if you could just briefly explain what those are as you're talking about them, that might help too.
Sure. Well, I think, Jeff, I was talking about the fact we are available to do what we call legal clinics, where for some of the legal documents people may need, we can actually assist preparing those, for the individuals. And a good example is we call health advance directives. And in case people don't know, advance directives are just documents where you, in advance, make decisions about what you would like to be happening on a particular subject. And as far as health decisions go, there's something called the Healthcare Power of Attorney. And that is a document where you can select an agent who would be authorized to make health decisions for you if you become unable to make those decisions for yourself. That could be in an end-of-life situation, or it could be any time you're unable to make your health decisions. And so in our class, Health Advanced Directives, we kind of review what the law is, options, give people ideas to think about, and then we can actually help them fill out the forms too.
And I know from past experience that oftentimes the healthcare power of attorney issue will arise when someone goes into a hospital. Let's say they're going to have surgery, and somewhere in the planning process they'll be asked, maybe by someone at their doctor's office or someone at the hospital, do you have a healthcare power of attorney? And in the event that there are any issues related to their treatment. So this again is a good time, maybe before you are even having some kind of planned surgery, or can't always plan on that and when that might occur.
Right.
But it might be a good idea, if you've heard that term but you don't know what it means, to go to the website, read about it, learn about it, and there are forms on the website. Now, I would caution you, as I'm sure Gary would, that just printing those forms off and then signing them and giving those to someone can be dangerous if you don't understand what they mean.
Well, one of the reasons we do the classes is we really would like individuals to know not only what the forms mean, but what their options are.
There you go.
And the idea of thinking ahead to situations we may not anticipate, because none of us know exactly what life may bring us at future points, and the fact we might, due to an accident or an illness we're not expecting, not be able to make some health decisions, or not be able to handle our finances. Those are all reasons to kind of plan ahead and put things in place so someone will be able to do those important functions for you. Another great example is the financial power of attorney, or what some may just call a general power of attorney, which gives authority to someone to handle your financial matters or whatever you specify. And you can set it up, if you wish, to take effect if and only if you become incapacitated. You're unable to handle your finances. But if you have the document and it has been properly executed, so it is legally valid, there would be someone who is authorized to go ahead and handle your personal business that, if he hadn't done that, would not have authority and might make it really difficult for some of your affairs to be well taken care of.
Okay. Why don't you give us, if you can, an example or two of how those can be abused? And situations that maybe you've seen, because I used to explain to clients that giving someone your financial power of attorney is giving them the right to stand in your shoes and make financial decisions for you. And in many instances, could be the right to empty your bank account the moment you give it to them, your checking account, possibly even sell your house, and all without you knowing this.
Yes, and unfortunately, we have had clients in cases where that exact thing has happened, and that is an extremely troubling development when someone has entrusted to another person who they really thought was looking after their best interest, turned out to be taking authority and using it to benefit themselves. And sometimes that's a loved one, it could be a family member, it could be a friend. And one of the things we ask folks to think about as they come to our classes, or we're helping them individually, is the person who you trust might have some things going on now or in the future you're not aware of. Maybe they have some financial issues. Maybe they have an addiction. Maybe they're in a new relationship. There could be any number of things where, to your surprise, they feel like they need money, and if they have the authority, they're going to take your money. And that can be a very dangerous development. So in addition to picking someone you trust to the best of your ability, we also think another important step is to build in some safeguards, build in some controls, so there's not going to be surprises. And a number of ways to do that. One example is if you do have someone as your financial power of attorney or your agent under power of attorney, be sure that you or maybe somebody else you have designated is getting your bank statements, is getting financial documentation and records of transactions. There's a way to kind of double check what your agent is doing, so that you're not going to have a very unpleasant surprise of seeing that your bank accounts have been emptied, your property has been sold, that kind of thing.
They may ask that the person you give this power to may ask that the bank statements be sent to them, for instance, instead of you. So what you might want to do is talk to your banker, go in and talk to someone there that you trust at the bank, where you have your checking or savings, and say, what can I do to keep this statement coming to me? I can have someone who's going to get my power of attorney come to my house or to my apartment and meet with me and go over this on a monthly basis. If that's not convenient, then maybe you want to see what it would cost to have two statements sent out at the same time, one to you and one to them, so you could track this, that type of thing.
Sure. I think, Jeff, those are really great examples. And everyone's situation may be a little bit different in terms of what financial, personal matters they have. But what we encourage is think about your situation, whatever it is, what the risks may be, what could go wrong, and to the extent you can build in means to monitor what's going on and to avoid something really bad happening, that's going to be a real plus.
And I may, at the risk of offending someone, if you're a grandparent and your grandchild calls you and says, Grandma or Grandpa, and Gary's nodding his head here because they probably had scenarios like this, cases like this, says, Grandma and Grandpa, I'm really in trouble and I really need some money. Can you give me some money now? And then you give them some money and they say they'll pay it back, or they say, will you just sign this document, and if I can have this document when I need some money, it'll help me to be able to get it and I won't have to bother you. Think seriously about that. You have to be a little bit selfish here. You have to make sure that you look at what you need to take care of yourself and your immediate family, maybe you and your spouse, before you start giving powers away to other people and money to other people. And it's good to develop a trusted relationship with someone who has shown you through a number of years that they have a track record with you, that you can trust them, not just somebody who is affiliated with a religious organization where you attend services. Just because they're a member of your same religious organization doesn't make them trustworthy. Just because they're a member of your family doesn't make them trustworthy. And I hate to sound negative, but we deal in trying to clean things up after the fact. But this Plan Ahead project, for instance, is to hopefully avoid those by planning ahead and avoiding the problem before it occurs.
Right, and when you started talking about a grandchild, Jeff, I was thinking also of the so-called grandparent scheme. And I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's a scheme where someone calls and pretends they're your grandchild and that they're in trouble and they need money to be sent very quickly, and they don't want mom and dad or other family members to know about it. And the idea is the person who's the scammer and schemer is trying to get oftentimes an older person, sometimes it could be a younger person as well, to transmit money through Western Union or through, gift cards or in a way that's not really going to be easily retrieved to them, to basically someone who's committing a fraud and a crime. And this is one of many, many different kinds of schemes, frequently using technology, that older persons in particular are increasingly subjected to. And we, along with others in the community, are really trying to fight.
Well, I'll give you another more pencil and paper example as compared to a more computerized example. I'm sure if you thought about it, folks, during the course of a day, particularly seniors, you may have people you see at the supermarket, or you go to a local restaurant for breakfast or to get a cup of coffee. And over the years, you build a relationship, you think, with some of the people who are helping you. And you start to give them information, and they start to say, oh, tell me about your grandchildren. And they find out where the grandchildren live and how old they are. Maybe you tell them their names. And this is intentional on our part to get that information, because then when they do contact you, maybe they contact you by phone or by computer, but they have that information. And so you feel that must be that grandchild when it's not, right? And I've seen that happen too.
And being cautious is a really good thing, because someone who is close enough to help you is also close enough to harm you if things go wrong. So
that's a very good way of putting it. Yeah. You were going to say something else.
Well, it's just one of the many lessons we have that we're trying to impart in our Plan Ahead and Protect Yourself series. And again, making those available not only on our website as we talked about, but through a lot of our community partners as part of this project as well. I did want to at least quickly mention.
Let me stop you.
Sure.
We have about 3.5 minutes.
Okay.
So I want you to just go right ahead and talk about and share with us whatever else you wanted to try and fit into that time frame.
All right, great. Well, I do want to emphasize, Jeff, we work with a range of community partners throughout the community to help not only protect the rights of older persons and their legal issues, but also to let them address some of the things we were just talking about in terms of victimization, exploitation, scheming, and scamming. We have an interdisciplinary team here in Montgomery County called CANE, the Collaboration Against Abuse, Neglect, and Exploitation, where we have many of the organizations, government organizations, nonprofit and private organizations, who together are teaming up to prevent, help individuals identify risks and prevent, but also to address problems after the exploitation has begun. So Adult Protective Services, the prosecutor's office, other service providers, just a range of the stakeholders are working really closely on this. And the more we can get the word out, and thanks for having me on your show tonight, that there are dangers of being exploited and victimized, but there are things you can do to protect yourself, to be on the lookout for risks, to get services and solutions. That's really going to be a win-win for everybody in the community, and it's definitely a team effort to do that.
Well, I'm glad you spoke about the collaboration, because I know that there are a lot of organizations in the area working to help seniors, protect seniors, and get them to think about these things before, these problems we're talking about, before they occur.
And Jeff, the other thing very quickly is, if you can prevent a problem or identify it earlier rather than later, not only do you have a better chance of recovering or avoiding loss, but even your legal position is better, because if you wait too long, it may be that the person who has wrongly taken your property or your money has already used the property, used the money, left the jurisdiction. It's going to be much more difficult to get a real solution. So earlier is better, and also contacting us at Legal Aid earlier rather than later is often better too, in terms of us really being able to possibly pursue a legal remedy for you.
One of the best visuals is a simple one. I used to have a colleague who used to say it's pretty hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube once you've squeezed it out, right?
It is.
It's pretty messy. Now, we have less than a minute here. I want to thank Gary Weston again, Senior Attorney at Legal Aid of Western Ohio, for coming this evening. This has been very informative. I want to remind you that Legal Aid line is 888-534-1432, that the website is legalaidline.org, legalaidline.org, that you can go to and begin to access the videos such as what you saw this evening. Again, I should not fail to mention the program's underwritten by the Dayton Bar Association, and they can be contacted at 222-7902. Also, the lawyer referral service is part of what is offered there. It's on your screen, 222-6102. That is another piece of service that is available in the community for those who do not have an attorney and are looking for some legal assistance. Gary, again, it's been wonderful having you.
It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you.
I hope maybe we can get you back in the future and talk about some of the successes with the Plan Ahead program, as well as some other, we can drill down a little bit on some other particular areas of helping seniors. I'm glad we got that call on reverse mortgages to add to our information this evening. Anything else you'd like to add? The clock is still running here, so I'm not entirely sure if we're online or not, but go ahead.
Well, I think if anybody is wondering if we can help, get in touch with us. We can't help everyone all the time, but you won't know unless you contact us.
Well said. And again, this program will be available on DATV's YouTube site. You can access that through www.datv.org, and it will be available for you to see in the next few days. I thank you for watching, and we'll look forward to hopefully having you tune in next month, the first Monday of December. Thank you very much. Good night.